listening to the Mark Bradford Alchemy for Life podcast.
I'm here with Zuby. All right, I'm here with Zuby. Hi, Zuby.
Hey, how's it going?
It's good. I'm assuming things are great for you. I know that you're a very positive person.
Yeah, things are always good. I'm blessed and highly favored, as always.
I appreciate that. So I normally like to start by saying, tell us what you do. So if you don't mind, please tell us what you do.
Sure. So my name is Zuby. I am a professional rapper, podcaster, author, and I also do a little bit of public speaking here and there. I also do some online coaching for both life coaching and social media coaching and also fitness coaching. So I've got about 7 or 8 different jobs there. But I'm best known initially, certainly through my music. I've been a full-time musician since 2011. And then more recently, I've also become well known as some kind of socio-political commentator and social media figure and influencer, as well as the few other things that I mentioned. So yeah, there's a couple of strings to my bow there.
Right. There certainly is. You have a lot of facets, and I think most of the people I run into that I'm really interested in chatting with are like that. And in fact, I find that people are dual-brained, and I say that because I was called that a long time ago, and I had to try to figure that out. And what it is that there's a side of you that loves logistics and is really good at it, and then there's a side of you that's creative, and somehow you figured out a way for those two parts to intertwine.
Absolutely. Yeah, that sounds like me 100%.
Yes.
I'm actually a computer science graduate from Oxford University, so I've definitely got the logical, rational, scientific brain there. But then, of course, being a musician as well, I've also got the creative side. So,
well, and there it is, exactly. And so you mentioned that you were sort of a socio-political commentator on Twitter. That's sort of where I bumped into you originally. I started following you and was fascinated by a lot of the things that you were doing and the things that you were saying. And I know that, and you've said this probably a million times, so I apologize for asking you this same question again, but there was something that happened on Twitter that sort of garnered you a lot more followers. Is that correct? You had sort of a jumping off point?
Yeah, I've had quite a few of them now, to be honest with you. But okay. I assume you're referring to the deadlift viral video.
Correct. And I thought that was hilarious. I thought it was wonderful. So would you mind terribly just explaining to people what it is we're talking about?
Yeah, sure. We're actually coming up to the 1-year anniversary of it in about 5 weeks' time. Yeah, well, 5 weeks to go. February 26th, 2019, I posted a 9-second clip of me doing a 230 kilogram deadlift. And in the tweet, I captioned it saying something like, I keep hearing about how biological men have no strength advantage over biological women in 2019. So watch me destroy the British women's deadlift record without trying. P.S. I identified as a woman while lifting the weight. Don't be a bigot. Right. So I posted that, obviously tongue-in-cheek, thinking, okay, this will get a couple hundred likes. Some of my followers will enjoy this and find it funny. Little did I know that it would end up being seen by literally over 10 million people and getting coverage on some of the biggest national and international news networks and podcasts and TV stations and all that. This thing just went bonkers. It went crazy. And then as a result of all these people sort of discovering me through that, a lot of people discovered my music and my podcast and my other work through it. So of all the stuff that I've done over time and all the things I've put effort and money and time into, it was funny that it was that silly 9-second video that put me on so many people's radars. But God works in mysterious ways, and I'm happy it happened.
It's quite amazing. It would be interesting to somehow go back in time or sort of redo reality as a test, an A/B test, and just have you post that and say, hey, look what I've done. Here's my latest lift. And then compare, right?
Oh,
and
gosh, dude. Well, to give you an idea, that video was already online on my YouTube channel, and the video had about 100 views because it was just part of a training. It was just part of my training in the gym. So It was just like on my secondary YouTube channel, which I don't really use anymore. It was just a clip of one of my training sessions. So the thing was already on my phone, and then I just tweeted it with that caption several months later, and that is actually how that came to be.
Well, that's so interesting because you said caption, and that kind of reminds me. There's a quote that I thought was by Nietzsche, but it's actually by Soren Kierkegaard, and I'm probably saying that wrong. It's, "If you label me, you negate me." And there's been some argument about what that actually means and so forth. But you experience labeling a lot on Twitter, I noticed, and so I like that it made you laugh. And so the reverse of that is sort of what you did with this video, in that it didn't have a label, so everyone assumed what it was. You put a label on it by basically saying, "Look, I'm a lady now," and then and then suddenly it goes crazy, and it's just amazing how a label has an effect. And so the labeling that you do get on Twitter is really interesting. If you want to talk about that a little bit, about how people do tend to label you, and as a bystander watching, I just sort of roll my eyes because I know the truth. I know the truth, and so it's just sort of fun to have them just sort of put their foot in their mouth.
Oh boy, I don't even know which. I've had every label under the sun thrown at me.
Well, one of them is, I guess, that they assume where you live. They assume that you're in the United States.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, firstly, I mean, that happens to me in the UK too. Everybody here thinks I'm American because of my accent. So, to give some background, I was born in the UK. I grew up in the Middle East in Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. When I was in Saudi, I went to an international school / American school for several years up until the 5th grade. And then I came back to the UK for school and university. But the American accent has always stuck to a strong degree. So despite being British, despite being born in the UK, I don't really sound British, whether that's an American listening or a British person listening. Sometimes I want to just, cut out the crap and just lie and tell people I'm from Atlanta or Los Angeles or something, just to... honestly, the question, where are you from or where your accent is from, I would, no exaggeration, I would say that I've answered that question in real life and online at least 30,000 times. I'm not even exaggerating.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, you got to keep in mind, I used to travel all over the UK promoting my music and selling my CDs. I've actually sold over 25,000 albums around the UK through direct promotion.
Yeah, that's independent. That's amazing.
Yeah, independent. Yeah, man. So I've met hundreds of thousands of people, like in the real world. I've met more people than most people meet in a lifetime. And at least 50% of them are going to ask me where I'm from or where my accent is from. So, in fact, that 30,000 is probably closer to 100,000. It's
crazy.
But yeah, it's fine. It's just when you find yourself continuously answering the same question several times a day, sometimes I'm just
maybe get a T-shirt.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm just want to be like, I'm from Atlanta. Simple.
I'm not from here. Yeah.
Yeah. Although I don't even think I sound like I'm from Atlanta, but I'll work it out.
No, you sound like a Midwestern. Actually, you sound
Midwestern.
Like, yeah, Kansas? You sound okay. the kind of, Kansas and sort of where I'm from, the sort of people that the news people pick up on because they don't have this discernible accent and they make great broadcasters.
Oh, okay. I think in the UK the equivalent of that. Oh, what do they call it here? There's a special word for what they call that accent that they used to want the news broadcasters and stuff to have. Oh, it's slipping my brain now. Oh no, that's annoying. There is a British accent, which is just kind of like it's considered just kind of a generic British accent rather than, a very strong one from Manchester or Newcastle or East London or something like that. It might come back to my brain, but
sure. And if it doesn't, we can look it up, and I'll throw it in the article because there's always an article that goes along with the podcast, and which, by the way, will have links to your music, your book, and how to find you on Twitter, all that good stuff, so that people can find you.
Okay, cool. And so coming back around, what were we saying? We were talking about labels. So
labels, yes. And so that's one of the labels is people assume you're from the United States when you make a comment about something.
Yeah, definitely. And people assume, therefore, that I'm African American or Black American, which I'm also not. What other labels do I? I mean, I get good labels, I get bad labels, I get neutral labels. It depends on who's labeling me, really, and whether or not they're fond of me.
But it is a fascinating study in how it's such a cranial shortcut, if you will, to just say, oh, you're X. Okay, so now I don't have to listen to you because I've labeled you as X. Or, oh, you're Y, which means you have this perspective, which means I understand you feel that way, but you don't really get it because you're Y and you're Z and so forth. So it's amazing that people do that. And what's fascinating as a bystander is to see that, is just to watch it when they're completely wrong.
Oh
to
gosh!
Say, your logic completely failed just now.
Oh, I love that.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's even better in real life. There's nothing better than in real life when someone just assumes my ideas and opinions and beliefs and everything I am and everything I think just off of looking at me. Because I normally sort of give them enough rope to hang themselves with. So I'll kind of let them go off on one and go and go and go. And then, yeah, when they finish that, then I'll sort of rebut them and let them know just how totally wrong they are about everything they just said. And yeah, it's pretty fun actually. It's pretty fun. It's
Yeah,
gotten me
I'm.
into some fun arguments and conversations over the years.
Well, it's interesting because I think that might actually be one of your skills. One of your prime skills is the giving someone enough rope to hang themselves with.
Yeah, well, a lot of the people who come after me. I mean, it's funny because look, I'm a very, very, very positive person. I'm not someone who tries to put lots of negative energy out in the world. You'll notice I never attack people online, even if you follow me on Twitter, which is sort of my most edgy platform. I almost never attack people. I don't call people out. I don't insult people, etc. It's a very one-way thing, right? Like I get loads of stuff
Right.
aimed at me, and if someone shoots at me, I will shoot back sometimes, but generally I'm not putting out anything out there that's so crazy. So I often laugh at this idea of me being considered somewhat controversial. I mean, I don't cuss. I'm like Christian boy, never doesn't drink, never taken any drugs, doesn't have any sort of totally crazy bizarre ideas or anything. In the world of hip hop, which of course is full of guns and violence and drugs and misogyny and all this stuff. I'm like the guy who has never been cool with that, never promoted it or whatever, and yet suddenly it's like, oh, that's the guy we're going to target. Like that's the controversial person, and that just
Right.
shows how stupid the world has become in some regards. When someone like me, who generally, I mean, if you look at half the, if you look at the vast majority of responses from people who like what I do, people are like, man, you're like the most sensible, level-headed, positive, kind person on this thing. And then on the other hand, you've got people on the other hand, I've got people calling me all kinds of names and stuff. And it's yeah, I mean, it's kind of fun. It's encouraging. It's also disheartening sometimes, but I just do what I do.
And I think, and yeah, and you keep a cool head, and you use a tremendous amount of energy doing that. It's obvious. And you might say, oh well, it comes naturally and so forth, but I know that takes a good amount of energy to sort of center yourself and say, look, no, this is not what I'm talking about, this is this. And you don't call someone a name. You say, here's your argument, and here's why it's wrong, because here's some obvious things that you just assumed in attacking me. And it's great. And you are one of the few people who is actually so consistently positive. That's not a platform for positive people for the most part.
It's not, no. But I've been in. See, one thing that people forget, especially everybody who just discovered me last year, because I mean the vast majority of people who now know me only discovered me last year. But I've been putting out music and being, I've been putting myself out there since 2006. So I've had over a decade to sort of adjust to experiencing, I guess, some level of fame or notoriety or being in the public eye or something like that. So I'm kind of like a seasoned veteran. So if people are following me now and they're like, man, how does he deal with this stuff? I'm like, dude, look at when I created my Twitter account, July 2009. Like I've been putting myself out there. There's nothing anyone has said. There's nothing anyone is saying that is new. I mean, the volume has gone up because more people know me and more people follow me. But I've been dealing with this stuff for a very long time. So I've learned how to handle it, and I'm very grateful that I have. I'm glad I wasn't sort of thrust into that position, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, because I wouldn't have known how to deal with it. So I know as things continue to grow and based on what I want to achieve in this world, then I'm going to certainly continue to grow and achieve more fame and notoriety in different regards. So I'm very mentally prepared for that. And yeah, I'm glad that comes across to people. And, the way I've put things out there as well, I mean, a lot of it is sort of a natural filter, because I feel like the people who get me and who the message clicks with and who understand where I'm coming from and what I represent, they're naturally drawn to my message. And the people who are, bitter, jealous, envious, negative haters are naturally repelled by it. So it sort of works out perfectly in the long run.
And I think stamina plays a part in that, in a lot of what you just talked about. Your stamina, the stamina of people who actually are interacting with you. So if they have a bit of stamina, they actually take the time to do a little bit of reading and sort of considering. But if they have very little stamina, they become more reactionary,
Mm.
and then that's where they sort of fail on the point. And to your point about the platform and being very positive, uh, there's also another platform that is not so much seen as being particularly positive, and that's rapping, and that you're also in that platform as well, and you're very positive there too.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Look, there's so much negativity in the world. I'm not interested in adding to it. From the beginning, I've always wanted to unite people with my music. I've wanted to inspire them. I've wanted to put out a positive message that's a juxtaposition to all
Hmm.
the negativity and rage out there and depression out there. And I've been consistent with that from day one. Again, this is why it's so funny because last year, or even this year, I'm getting people talking about, oh, Zuby has changed, or Zuby has rebranded, or Zuby's now trying to appeal to this audience or that audience or whatever. I'm like, look, you can go back to my first album, literally made when I was 18. You can go back and listen to all of my songs. You can listen to everything. I've been one of the most consistent people, like,
Hmm.
period. I haven't shifted much at all in what I'm representing. It's not like you'd go back and listen to my first album or my second album and I was some kind of like gangster rapper or I was rapping about pushing drugs
Right.
or whatever. It's like my message has always been the same. And anyone who actually, I mean, I've had recently I've had a lot of people thinking, as I've started to express my political views more out in the open and feature on some heavily political podcasts and things like that, both in the UK and the US. I did initially have a lot of people like, man, are you worried about alienating some of your audience or, turning some people against you or whatever? And I was like, look, the people who know me and like me and ride with me are going to continue doing all of those things because I've always kept it really real and I've been honest from the beginning. I've always been
Mhm.
authentic. I never portrayed myself as something that I'm not. So I can genuinely say that I don't think I've lost any fans at all off of the basis of, any of my socio-political views or anything like that, because the people claiming I've changed are the same people who didn't know who I was 2 months ago. And it's
Right.
like, what are you even comparing to? You haven't even been along for the journey. But those who have are like, oh, okay, this guy's he's consistent. He's getting more known. He's opening up a little bit more, but he's not saying anything that he wasn't saying not
Right.
that long ago. It's like maybe the world has shifted, but I haven't shifted too much.
And that's fairly rare, and I think that does still get back to stamina, that you've had the stamina to just be true to what you've wanted and not
Mm.
manipulate it because you thought it would garner more fame or garner more of the kind of people you wanted, or something like that. You've said, no, this is who I am, and I'm
Mm.
just going to sort of expand my message. I'm going to expand the media at which I use it. I'm going to learn the media, and I think you have learned the media very well. And in fact, I think that would be my suggestion for your next book, would
Oh,
be
okay.
something about, your journey along social media, and how you've sort of weathered the storm of social media and stayed positive, because that's
Mm.
something a lot of people would really benefit from. It probably would change their opinion of how to use social media, and it would even change their usage of it, and maybe perhaps give them a tolerance they didn't have before, to be able to say, oh, so I can interact on social media without just attacking people, or can it? you know
Yeah.
so I think that would be good, and so I'm just saying, I think that would be a very fascinating book, because I don't think there's a lot out there from people who've actually put the time, effort, and resources into migrating, mitigating the whole social media
Mm.
medium, I'd say.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I think I will put something out there. I've got a lot of ideas, so I'll
Oh,
certainly
sure.
add it to them.
Sure. And
But yeah, man, I mean, what I was going to say actually is the thing is, I mean, there's no better foundation to build what you do on than authenticity. Because if you are true to yourself, and you don't try to bend to go with what may be trendy or what people are liking or whatever, even if that's expedient, then what happens is you build a true audience. And also you can, you can sleep well at night. You can look at yourself in the mirror and know that you're not just being a fake. There's so many fake people out there. There are a lot of people who have just built their whole thing on nonsense and on piles and piles of lies. And the problem is, once you start lying, you need to keep on lying to keep the whole thing going. And eventually that eats at people. Sorry, that eats at you. And then also, it's like a house of cards, right? If one thing sort of comes down, or you've got some skeletons in your closet or something like that, then it doesn't take much to break the whole thing down. Whereas if you are authentic, it's like no one can. Firstly, you'll attract the right audience. You'll get people who are genuinely on board with what you're doing or what you're saying. And also, there's nothing to hide. Like there's nothing to hide. It's why I don't even delete my old tweets, right? People are
Mhm.
like, "Oh, you should delete your tweets every so long because in the year 2023 someone may come and try to dig something up that you said in 2015." And I'm like, "Cool, let them dig it up. Let them dig it up. I'm not gonna, it's like
Right.
I'm not hiding from anyone. All right, I'm not hiding from anyone. I'm not ashamed of stuff I've done or stuff I've said. It's like, okay, well, if it's something that I still agree with, I'll just reinforce it. If it's something that I don't agree with, I'll just say, oh, well, that's what I thought in 2015, and here's my current view,
Mhm.
and that's fine. I don't like to. I don't know. There's all these stupid games that people are playing right now. This whole cancel culture stuff, this whole woke nonsense stuff, and I'm like, look, I'm not playing this game. The only way you can win is by not playing, because it's just a circular firing squad. No matter how woke you are, people are always going to be trying to outflank you in wokeness, and you're going to die on that sword. And that is
Mhm.
happening to a lot of people right now. And I must say, I feel a little bit of Schadenfreude about it.
It's interesting to watch, and you're absolutely right about again, as a bystander, mostly watching the whole cancel culture and how it cancels itself sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
because the rules that are put forth of that are rules you simply can't follow, and the right, and the
Yeah,
people that
and
even create the rules are being canceled by them.
of course, and they have to be, because the rules change every 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something that someone is saying right now that in next year that'll no longer be acceptable,
Right.
and someone's going to dig it up, and someone's going to hold them to those next standards, and they're going to be brought out to be publicly shamed and to do the whole public apology and whatever. It's literally like a struggle session. The whole thing is just totally ridiculous. So again, I get people like, "Oh, Zuby, are you worried about getting canceled?" And I'm like, I can't be canceled. How can I be canceled? I don't have an audience that cancels people.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I never tried to create that audience, and I never tried to pander to that audience. In fact, I directly oppose that audience quite often.
Right.
So I'm not worried about it, because I know that my fan base and my audience aren't weak, fragile, hyper emotional people who can't handle truths or who can't handle different opinions or whatever. I mean, one of the most common comments I get, both publicly and in private, is, "Hey, man, like, I don't agree with everything you say, but I love the fact that you say it, and I respect that." That's literally one of the most common messages, mentions, whatever, that I get. And I'm like, cool, because that's the whole point. I mean, I don't agree with everything I say. There's nobody on earth who I agree with everything that they say or everything they think. That's just not how real life works, as everyone sort of implicitly knows, right? There's no one who you
Right.
100% agree with on everything. But as long as you can be respectful and kind and charitable and empathetic, then that's fine. That's part of what makes the whole world interesting. And that's the weird thing, because we're living at this time where there are just so many weird sort of oxymorons going on. So people are saying, yeah, we want diversity. But then again, if there's a little bit of diversity of thought, or someone doesn't
Right.
stick totally with a certain program, then you want to ostracize them or excommunicate them or something like this. It's like a cult or something like that. And it's weird, there are all these different narratives which sort of cancel each other out. And again, I just don't play that game. I point out that the game is being played, but I don't go in myself and start trying to throw other people under the bus and trying to
Mm-hmm.
cancel and deplatform and censor other people, because it's like, look, you can play that game for a while, but it will always come back to you, because there's always going to be Nobody is infallible, and like we said, the rules keep changing, so they're
Right.
going to catch you on something eventually, and then you're going to have to do some sad, groveling public apology, which nobody likes to see.
No, and it's fascinating to me because I look at it and I hate to use this word, but it's not sustainable
Mm-mm.
because I see everything as a system, and it fascinates me. I figured that out as one of my core skills. So everything to me is a system, when I look at those rules and I think that's wait, that's not going to work because if this happens or this happens, you'll contradict yourself. So I watch those systems just fall apart because they just simply aren't sustainable. They're just not the simple rules that you just gave of being empathetic to people and being kind
Mm.
and not going into the name calling and taking your time to reply properly and to hold things up to the light. That's sustainable. But this other arbitrary rule, if you don't agree with me, doesn't really, it just simply is not sustainable.
No, it's not, and it's tiring. It's tiresome. It's
Yes.
boring. It's just there's no fun there. You can't. I mean, the thing with the people who get really into this stuff is they can't even make jokes anymore. They have no sense of humor because they've killed it. Right? They're trying to kill comedy. They're trying to kill having a sense of humor. Unless you're just talking about how evil Trump is, that's like the only thing that's sort of acceptable in those circles. Because everything is going to be regarded offensive to somebody somewhere, and even if that person is not offended themselves, someone else will jump in to get offended on their behalf. I mean, I have people trying to get offended on my behalf all the time, and I'm like, yo, it's cool. If I'm offended, I'll say it. Right? You don't need to jump in and start, trying to
Right.
trying to score points or trying to virtue signal by showing that you're the first person and the quickest person to come to the defense of someone who wasn't actually offended in the first place.
Right. I was literally going to jump to humor at the second that you said it. I
Okay.
smiled because that's exactly what you're right. That the sense of humor and the root of humor is that there has to be a bit of truth there, or it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Mm.
And sometimes the root of it is something that's a point of friction and tension, and sometimes it's supposed to make you feel uncomfortable sometimes, and that's uh, that is the trait of good humor. Humor isn't just watered down and it doesn't offend anyone. Well, then it can't be funny then.
No, I mean, look, humor is important, and a society or any group of people that loses their sense of humor, then that's actually a really bad sign, and those aren't people who you really want to hang around with or be
Hmm.
with. I mean, life is difficult. Life is a struggle. Life is painful. It doesn't matter who you are, however great your life is, however terrible you think your life is. You're going to go through struggles. You're going to go through hardships. You're going to go through problems, issues, death, disease. I mean, it's inevitable. And if it's not happening to you right now, it's probably happening to somebody that you know, somebody close to you. And humor is what, it's sort of like a almost like a valve for the pressure that you can sort of release some of the pressure that goes on in day-to-day life. So when people try to sort of shut down humor or even shut down certain types of like art or music or whatever, I'm kind of like, look, society needs these pressure outlets, otherwise that just builds up and people kind of go crazy, because no matter how awful or traumatic life may be, one of the best skills that any individual can have and one of the best mindset traits is having the ability to smile and laugh through it. Because if you can't do that, now this doesn't mean you laugh at everything, right? Some stuff is serious, but life is both serious and also very funny at the same time. And you need to maintain that balance in order to stay sane. I mean, imagine that I don't know, say something that's not even that major. I don't know, you're on your way to work or you're on your way somewhere and you get stuck in traffic for 2 hours, right? Like that's a pain, that's annoying. But if you have a sense of humor, you can find the funny side of it. You know what I mean? And that's what will keep you sane. And instead of effing and blinding and screaming and cursing that you're late, which you now can't even control, you can just look on the funny side of it, or even on the gratitude. You can even be gracious for it. Maybe by being delayed, you've avoided getting caught up in an accident, or
Hmm.
something else has happened that in the long run is going to turn out to be a positive. And that's why people need to have a sense of humor and an ability not to take everything so seriously and be offended by everything and always be indignant and righteously angry and whatever. It's just very tiresome. It's very,
It
very
is.
tiresome.
And that's well said. That's well said. And I for to your point of what you're saying, I basically see it as the absurdity of life. I mean, sometimes life is just so absurd, it's
Mm,
funny. And like you said, sometimes you need to be serious, but there are other times where you don't have to be serious, or you don't really have any other options, and you might as well just
exactly.
laugh at it. And sometimes it's little things like looking really forward to leftovers that you had in the refrigerator, and you're like, I'm gonna enjoy this, and you open it up, and it happens to be teetering, and it splatters all over the floor.
Exactly.
You look up and you just start laughing, like, or not,
Yeah,
which is what
exactly.
happened to me not too long ago. Or you go through a horrendous 10-year period in your life, and yet people think that you're a happy person. And I realized that some of the happiest people that I've encountered in my life are people who've gone through horrible, horrible things. And I know that because I'm one of them. And I know that because when your scale gets set to zero and you realize where zero really is, and it's not a
Mm,
hangnail, or it's not you didn't get everything you wanted today, then you realize where good and bad is, and you realize where 0 and 10 is, and then you start to appreciate that today is a 7 where everyone else
mm.
thinks it's a 1.3.
Gotcha, man. Yeah, perspective and gratitude are the two things most lacking in society right now. If I
Mm-hmm.
look at modern Western society, people lack perspective and people lack gratitude. And I think that that's a core fundamental reason why so many people are feeling anxious or depressed or angry or
Right.
certain mental health issues or whatever. A lot of it is people lacking those two things. So many of the problems in modern society don't stem from lack, they actually stem from abundance, right? It's so easy to survive now. It's so easy to survive. There's no massive wars going on. There's no plagues, there's no diseases that are wiping people out. There's so much food. There's more food than we need. Everybody's getting fat. There's very little lack in society in the true sense. Now people feel that there is because people are wired to always think about not what they have, but what they don't have. So they stay anxious and they stay depressed. But man, like stuff is so good on a global level, on a historical level. It's hard to think of a better time to be alive and a better place to be alive than in the Western world in 2020, despite all the nonsense. But it seems like human beings, I don't know if it's hedonic adaptation or something like that, but we've got this ability to just always want more and just to see the lack and to see the problems and to see the obstacles and to want to moan and complain and not actually see what we have that is just actually incredible and for which billions of people around the world, if we're being honest, would kill for. And you've got people you've got people literally crossing oceans in boats trying to get to what we have. Meanwhile, we've got people here running around screaming and complaining about how terrible it all is. And I'm just like, man, I wish I could just like swap two people's locations
Mm-hmm.
even just for a week and
Right.
just sort of give them that perspective and give them that gratitude. They'll come back and yeah, they'll be whining a lot less, I can assure you that.
I think the lesson would be learned whether you swap them in time or space. So if you
Mm,
could either swap them in space or time and send them back not too long ago, they definitely would see the difference. And I think when you talked about hedonistic adaptation, it kind of reminds me of a quote about weak men create hard times and hard
mm.
times create strong men. And I think we are in really awesome times, and I think it's the times that could possibly create weak people because it's so good.
Yeah, well, I think it's definitely creating weak people. I don't even think
Up,
that's
up
really
for
debatable
discussion.
now. Yeah, no, I really don't think that's even debatable now. I think it's just a fact. The whole thing of people talking about the word snowflake has kind of been overused now,
Yes.
but the whole thing of there being a snowflake generation, which my cohort is technically part of. It's a very real thing. If you see the things people are whining about and moaning about and complaining about, and you see the way that universities are treating students and the things that they're amplifying and making big issues about. I mean, whether you're talking about trigger warnings and safe spaces, or you're talking about university events where people aren't even allowed to clap because clapping might trigger somebody in the audience, or you're talking about words that you're not even allowed to use. And I don't even mean sort of, harsh slurs or anything like that. I'm just talking about overly political language. In the UK now, in Sheffield University, they're paying students to report microaggressions. And it's like they're creating their own little Stasi or Gestapo or something, and it's literally the thought police. And even in the UK now, they've got you can now be arrested or investigated by the police for what they call a hate incident, not a hate crime, right? So this isn't something that goes into the category of a crime, but what they refer to as a hate incident, which is just potentially any incident that somebody else subjectively could have found offensive. So someone could go on Twitter and say, "Oh, I find this tweet offensive. Report me to the police," and that's not a crime, but it gets logged as a hate incident. So I'm now in the police system because I tweeted something that somebody somewhere disagreed with. I mean, it's getting really ridiculous,
It is.
and
It is.
this is what happens when there are too many resources and not enough legitimate problems. Or even if there are legitimate problems, which there are, the focus is not on them. People would rather focus on the nonsense instead.
Right. And I saw a video that might be the one you're referring to about using jazz hands versus clapping.
Oh, good
I
grief,
think,
man!
yeah, I saw that, and when I saw that, I watched it a couple times. I thought for sure it wasn't real. I thought
It
it
is
was a
real.
skit. It
It's
is
very real.
right.
Yeah.
It's South. A lot of the things of South Park have become reality,
Yeah.
right?
Did you see them? Did you see them basically cover exactly what I did in my deadlift tweet? By the way, there was a South
Uh
Park episode
oh,
last year where they basically the whole storyline was pretty much like what my tweet was about.
no, I haven't seen that. I actually
Oh,
haven't
okay.
watched it in a little bit, but I'll have to go back then and look for that. That's
Yeah.
hilarious. That's absolutely hilarious. South Park has become reality now. The
Oh,
absurdity
dude,
of South
it's
Park, which is sort of enlarged to show texture, if you will. But it's real. It's real now. And that video was one of them. I was just stunned by it, and it was in the just the few minutes of that video, they were already falling prey to their own rules, and they were already kind of breaking down in arguments about what people had said, and everyone that had said something was being questioned and then questioned and then questioned again, and they didn't get anything done because of it.
is this one the is this the Democratic Socialists of America one?
That's
The
correct.
point of personal privilege.
Yes.
Please
And
do
then
not
someone
use
uses
gendered language. Yeah.
yes, that
Yeah,
was
that's a real thing, man. And keep in mind, I'm in the world of music as well, which is very um, uh, progressive and a leftist in its ideas. And I see a lot of this stuff coming before it sort of gets fully
mm,
mainstreamed. I mean, there was an application form I was filling out for my music last year, and not only was I able to self-identify my gender, I was also able to self-identify my ethnicity, and it
oh
had a
wow.
note saying that ethnicity is not based on your skin color, where you were born, where you grew up, etc. Ethnicity is based on your own subjective feelings and how you define yourself. So, according to this thing, I could have just put down that I'm a Native American woman, or I'm a Chinese
Half Italian.
pansexual, gender queer, or whatever, and they have to take it dead serious. And this is just a sign of just how stupid people are becoming, basically, right? It's like it started out with, I mean, this is the problem with a lot of movements, is that they start out with decent and fair intentions, but they don't know when to stop, and they just kind of keep going until they reach this totally ridiculous level, and oftentimes where they end up resembling what they were fighting against in the first place. And I think you've seen that with a lot of different social movements over the years and over the decades, is that they now, in their modern incarnation, they now resemble what they literally sought out to fight against. So you had some anti-racism movements, which have ended up becoming quite explicitly racist. You had the feminist movement, which started out as a fight for equality, and which over time, to some degree, has just become a man-hating endeavor, or almost like a female supremacy movement in some parts. You've had the anti-fascist movement, who are now going around the street in masks beating people up for having the wrong opinions, which is,
Mhm.
it's kind of hard to get more fascistic than that.
Mhm.
And so all of these things have just been inverted. It's like they've just totally lost the plot of what the original idea was. And yeah, I don't know. It's a strange thing. I do hope and I do believe actually that the pendulum is starting to swing back, And I think that's going to happen this decade. I'm seeing a lot of signs that people are getting increasingly tired and fed up with it, and more willing to speak out on it. Not everybody is there yet, but part of the reason I'm so outspoken is because I know it emboldens other people to do the same in the long term. And I think that once a certain critical mass is reached and people realize, oh, okay, I'm not in the minority here, then I think that more people are going to speak out and be like, okay, look, certain things have gone a bit too far. Can we just kind of go back to a happy medium where everybody is happy and we have like legitimate
Right.
equality, not fake equality?
Right. I think that would be wonderful. And I do think that I think the structure of society is that there is the pendulum and it does swing, and things are cyclical. And I think we're probably seeing a period in which there's been a silent majority that's becoming less and less silent because they're just fed up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, part of it as well is you don't want this pendulum to swing too hard in any one direction because you don't
Right.
want the counter swing back the other way to be too aggressive. So it's like we've been in this period of overcorrection for the past 5 years. And I also don't want it to overcorrect to the other side, right? It
Right.
needs to correct, but you don't want it to go so far that it's like, okay, now the problem is you've got, some extreme right wing politics or something like that. It's like, look, just sort of come back to this happy medium where you're not demonizing men and you're not demonizing white people and you're not, having all these weird double and triple standards where you're viewing people through the prism of race and gender and sexuality for everything, even when it's not relevant. Um, I don't know, man. It's a weird thing for me because, like I said, I've always just been consistent. Like my views haven't particularly changed in this regard. I've just felt it more necessary for me to get involved in some of these conversations because it's almost like not enough people are doing it, and by being silent for too long, then you are essentially being complicit. And history shows that that is not the way forward.
Right. I think it's all evil needs to triumph is for good men to stand by and do nothing.
Amen.
I love that one. So I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And look, I know most people have good intentions, and it's easy for people to get possessed by ideas and push them too far, especially when it starts becoming, an almost religious idea. And I don't even say religious in the sense of traditional religion. I just mean something that's
Commitment.
so deeply held and unquestioned and can't be challenged and everything like that. Because I mean, there's that phrase, right? People don't have ideas; ideas have people. And
Hmm.
I think there's actually quite a lot of truth to that, and you can really see that in the way that people behave and the way that ideas sort of permeate throughout society, oftentimes without people really questioning the motive behind them or whether they make sense and where they're coming from.
Right. That's some strong advice. And speaking of speaking of strong advice, I'd love for you to tell people about your book.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to. So I wrote a fitness book last year, which is called Strong Advice: Zuby's Guide to Fitness for Everybody. And it's a concise guide which breaks down everything essentially that I think people need to know when it comes to mindset and motivation, nutrition, and training. Whether your goal is to burn fat, build muscle, gain weight, lose weight, get stronger, get in better shape, it really sort of breaks down the fundamentals there. And the book it's now sold over 1,000 copies. It's helped tons of people lose weight, build muscle, get stronger. I'm seeing every day I'm getting really, really positive feedback on it. It's available now. It's on my website, teamzuby.com. It's available now on ebook and also on audiobook. The paperbacks are currently sold out, but I will do another run of them later on in the year. But yeah, if you're someone who's trying to take their fitness more seriously in 2020, you've been trying a lot of stuff and it hasn't been working, you just want to understand the fundamentals and get results from putting in the work, then I highly recommend my book.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I think you say a lot when you say willing to put the work in and in fundamentals, because people usually jump to the magic bullet. And they say, oh, this magic elixir will fix everything. What's that thing I can do? And there isn't that thing, because if there was that thing, everyone would have already done it by now,
Mm-hmm.
or at least somebody would be selling it to you for a lot of money. So,
Oh, dude, look, if there was a diet pill that actually like made people burn fat, do you know how rich the creator of that would be?
right,
Right? This
right,
this pill wouldn't be a secret, trust me. And you wouldn't be
right.
seeing fat people either.
And it'd be sold by a food company, because then they would sell more food, because
Oh
people would just
gosh,
keep
yeah.
eating more, as opposed to the other way around. So that's
Yeah.
great, and it's nice, and you're marketing your book essentially directly as well, just like you do with your music.
Yeah, man. I'm a one man army. I don't have a team. I do need to put a team together eventually. But yeah, everything I do, my
Yeah.
music, my podcast, my books, my marketing, my social media, it's all me. I don't have a team. Everything I do
Well, you
is that you
just
see is
described
me.
me.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
there we
I
go.
respect that. I respect that greatly, because it's the same thing with my books and the podcast and everything else as well. And speaking of that, you also do have a podcast. So I'm going to make sure people have a link to your podcast as well.
Yeah, please do. Real Talk with Zuby. New episodes every Friday. I've had some
Nice.
great guests on. I've had some very well known figures. I've had Scott Adams on there,
Well, it makes
Dave
two of us.
Rubin, Gad. Yeah. I've got Dan Crenshaw coming on this week. And more to come. More to come. It's not just political either. We talk about all kinds of stuff. We
Right.
talk about music and culture and politics and Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and whatever, fitness, health, whatever's interesting. Just a range of very interesting guests. And we've got
Right.
over 70 episodes out so far. So yeah, definitely check that out.
That's very cool. That's very, very cool. I have to ask you, I noticed that you are actually going to be in Milwaukee in July. Is that
Mm.
correct?
Yeah, that's correct. July
That's
11th.
Yes, July 11th for hashtag Better Discourse.
Yeah. So this is an event that's being hosted in Milwaukee, July the 11th. It got a range of different speakers and panelists. So I'll actually be on the panel talking about what the barriers to racial equity are, which is an interesting thing
Ooh,
to invite me onto because I don't even think racial equity is a achievable goal to begin with. In that sense, I think the whole concept is a little bit flawed. But yeah, I'll be on that panel, and I think I'll definitely have some interesting stuff to say. I was going to say I'll try not to trigger people, but I probably will.
well, let me know where you want to go for lunch then, because
Okay.
because that's where I'm located actually. So I was fascinated
Okay.
by that. I
Oh,
didn't
dope.
realize
Okay.
that. Yeah, yeah. And are you familiar with Summerfest? Have you heard of that?
Yes, someone did tell me about it actually.
So I actually looked up the some of the acts at Summerfest to see if I could find you on there, because I thought, well, maybe he's going to do Summerfest and then he's going to do this, because Summerfest is just before that. It's
Oh, really?
June. Yeah, it's June 24th, I think, to July 5th. So
Ah,
if you have any interest in that, it's an absolutely amazing music festival, and I know there's one in the UK that's very similar to that one as well. So,
okay. I will have
but
to have a look.
yeah, take a look. Use
Yeah.
summerfest.com and you can take a look at that. So, so that's awesome. So it's pretty cool that if someone's listening and is local, they can also see you in person here in July.
Yeah, definitely. I will be there. I've never been to Milwaukee before. I've never been to Wisconsin before, so let's add it to the list.
People will think you're from here because of your accent or lack thereof. So you'll have to go through all that again. So
That's cool. I'll just tell them I'm a local.
that's right. Yeah, you'd say you're from Greenfield or something, or Bayview. So
Okay.
well, cool. Well, wonderful. I and as I've always said, I don't. I promise not to take up any more than an hour of someone's time. So you've been such an awesome person to chat with, and this has just been so much fun. And I wanted to ask if there was anything else you wanted to touch on before we left.
To be honest, no, not specifically right now. I would ask for everybody to, of course, check out my music. You can get that on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you listen to music. Same goes with my podcast as well, which is called Real Talk with Zuby. And if you want to check out my book, Strong Advice, you can get that and all of my other music and merchandise at teamzuby.com. So go check that out.
Awesome. Well, I wanted to thank you again. Thank you so much. And like I said, the article that comes along with this will have all those links for people as well, so they can make sure they find you.
Nice one, Mark. It's been good to talk to you.
Yeah, same here. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Hey there. Thank you for listening. I'm really grateful that you did that. If you liked the episode or you like the podcast in general, I would love for you to rate it. That kind of feedback really helps me to know which direction I should be going, what I can improve on, and so forth. I would like to alert you to my latest book. It's called The Sword and the Sunflower. Check it out on Amazon, and I'll talk to you next time.